one of my big worries is I keep hearing this narrative about African Americans and showing up to vote, which is that if African Americans don't show up to vote, Democrats are going to lose. That is true to some degree, but also if white Americans show up and overwhelmingly vote for Republicans, Democrats could lose. It feels to me like there's almost a narrative where African Americans could get blamed if Trump is reelected when, when you look at the actual statistical numbers, we're not as big of the electorate as some would lead you to think.
Yeah, but they want to play. Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, do I feel like black people are
like we won't get the credit if we get it right?
Yeah, you don't win because of us; you lose because of us. Yeah, I could agree with that. I think that, but that also goes back to what I was just saying about how a lot of these groups are existing in a space of like really digging in on what they believe. Because what they believe, it really truly matters to them. Mm-hmm. And I would argue we got way more single issue voters now than we ever have in any election. So I don't think it's just black people. I think women and abortion is going to be a huge deciding factor in how people vote, down to the last minute. And whether or not you choose to believe Trump, one way or the other. I think that's the thing that we also have to look at with Republican voters. And, I think, also a lot of people just not going to vote. It's going to be a lot of people that just abstain. Israel and Palestine, that's going to be a huge factor on how Jewish people and Muslim people show up to the polls. And I guarantee you, with the emotions attached to that conflict, a lot of them people don't give a fuck about what other issue is on the docket or on his platform. So I just think candidates have to be very cognizant of that. And I think now politics, instead of trying to bring people together and get everybody on board with you, it's just trying to appease the people in the middle, who are the marginal groups that will be the tiebreakers in an election that's probably going to be 51-49. And in that instance, when you run those numbers, black people are a large enough voting bloc to take something from 49 to 50 or back down to 49. And that's not enough to just single us out. But I think that's how they try and take it and spin it, because the margins are so thin.
But there's no denying that Democrats have taken, I think, black voters for granted. But it doesn't feel like Republicans have taken that opportunity. Like I listen to Trump or I listen to other Republicans and they'll start talking. And for the first 10 seconds, I'm like, all right, maybe I'm rolling with you. Maybe I can see where you're going. And then it always ends up with like a welfare queen or some type of racist dog whistle or bullhorn or bullshit that I'm like, you lost me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a degree of, to say that Republicans don't or haven't done. I mean, there's a lot of black people that's going to vote for Trump. There's a lot of black people that are already vocally and openly Republican. And, and I'm not talking about just the Tim Scotts. Like, it ranges from Tim Scott all the way down to Sexy Red. So.
But is that being an uninformed voter? I mean, Tim Scott is an opportunist. Like that. But actually, let me back up on that for a second then. Because Byron Donald said today that black people were better, black families were stronger under Jim Crow. Obviously a ridiculous statement. But there is an appetite for this kind of buffoonery among Republicans. Like there's the uninformed voter, and then there's this.
Yeah, but then you have people who go, I'm voting for Trump because he cut us checks during COVID. And for some voters, that's enough. Single issue. I was broke. That dude gave me money. That's enough. I don't care about anything else. La, 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 la. I don't want to talk about it. So, yeah, uninformed. But even if you are informed and you still vote for Trump, does that mean that you're a lunatic? Like, I wouldn't assume every black voter to be uninformed. I would simply say that many are voting against what I believe is their own interests.
But if you, I wouldn't say that every black voter is uninformed, but if it's either you're voting against your self-interest knowingly or unknowingly, like how do you rationalize that? I mean, I get voters who say, I am just sick of the process and I sit at home. But if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I've never even tried to understand that. I got a couple Trump voters in my family, and for them, the issue was unemployment. And I got a couple family members who were down bad financially under Obama, and they just felt like shit got better for them under Trump. And so I'm not here to sit down with you and crunch numbers from '08 and compare the growth curve of your fiscal goal, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough for you, my dude. All right, fine, whatever. But I do think that, you're looking to get people who are legitimately voting, sometimes to spite Democrats too. There's a little bit of that as well. But, I don't know how you reconcile that. I don't know how you make sense of that. I do know that yelling at people ain't going to get them to understand you, and tweeting crazy at them ain't going to get them to understand you. That's just never going to be what it is. The same way we got politicians as running game, there's a lot of voters and media members that are also doing the same thing and stirring the pot and filling their pockets. So, I think a lot of people are misinformed, but I don't know how we change the ecosystem of how information is disseminated. And that's the first thing that would have to change before we start talking about how do you reach a voter or how do you get into their mind. That's a whole nother world, boss.
As the media landscape changes and we go towards more YouTube channels, towards more podcasts, things like that, do you think that's going to make people more susceptible to disinformation? Or do you think it'll be able to inform more people who maybe weren't turning into, the daily news?
It's going to do both. You're going to have people that are more politically active. I'll say this much: for all the political chargedness in this country, I've never seen a country more opinionated about politics than what we are now. Second only to the WNBA. All of a sudden, everybody's an expert on that shit now. But I do think that a lot of media is biased. I also think we have to be careful about the word media. Just because you got a microphone and a camera, it's like you are making media, but you are not a journalist. You are not trained, and you are not someone who is trying to look objectively at the information and simply present facts. A lot of this stuff is bootleg pundit spin job type of shit, man. Mm-hmm. And it's not really helping anything. It's not helping any of these conversations move forward in the least.
How do you think starting out radio informed your comedy and informed the way you talk about politics in your company?
I think starting in radio, it gave me a pipeline to the people. Birmingham is a very opinionated place. And, to have a morning show where, we played rap songs and we did prank calls and we had our comedy, but we also had real moments of levity. We also had very real moments where people call in with their problems and what they're going through. And what you start noticing, and the thing that I've always noticed about people, and this is also coming from the road doing comedy, is that most people are only concerned about themselves and their community and what is immediately around them and how that can get better. You start talking to people about what's happening over there and what's happening over there and what's happening over there. They want to feel something for it, but also I'm dealing with something right here. So I can't ignore this in exchange for trying to fix that, because fixing that is going to help all of us. Cool. But it's hard for people to get on board with that when I'm hungry today, dog. I'm starving today. I'm broke right now. And this candidate is talking about he going to give me some money and a meal, even though he hasn't explained how he's going to pay for it and how the funding and where it's going to come from and the legit. But at least he's talking about a meal. That ain't said nothing. So I think you start understanding just how individual our experiences are and how less and less of a sense of community we have as a people. And so this idea of a collective consciousness has started to go out of the window.